Welcome to another episode of Distorted Opinions. I'm once again joined by Matt and Ted, and today we're going to be talking about the GarageBand experience with a special guest. We have Chris Harris, the bassist from the band 5 Amp Fuse, joining us. And guys, I didn't share this in the pre-show.
Oh, you found the shirt.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow.
You found the shirt?
We're going to hang.
That's cool.
I did. I'm going to just put this back here. We'll talk about that later. But Matt, Chris, and Ted were the founding members of the GarageBand 5 Amp Fuse. So we're going to be talking about how the band got started, some of the gigs you guys played, and I am quite positive there's going to be a lot of reminiscing and stories and probably a lot of laughs. So, Chris, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you.
Welcome.
And,
Thanks for having me, guys.
We're almost got the band back together, man.
Very close, yeah.
So, Chris, why don't we start a little bit by having you tell us a bit about yourself. You play bass. How long have you been playing bass? And, you know, how did you get into playing bass?
Yeah, I've been playing bass for over 20 years. I got into it from really my brother and my friends and just listening to music. I always wanted to play it. And it's always been a lot of fun. Like, I've always been trying to listen to different types of music and then listen to the bass line, pick that out and play it. And that's always been, I haven't really done any lessons or anything.
Sure.
But I enjoy it quite a bit. We've done a lot with, like playing in bands all throughout the years, and it's been a blast. And I still continue it to this day.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. And we're glad that you have. You're an amazing bass player. And,
Well,
you know,
I mean,
thank you.
There's
I
amazing,
appreciate that.
and then there's Harris. So,
For real,
I mean,
though.
that's right.
I really can't think of anyone to this day, even from a celebrity standpoint, of just really how talented you are, Harris. Like,
Thanks, man.
It's like you were born to have this gift of playing bass. And for anyone that's ever, seen Harris live, even jammed out with him, can easily define that very creative, very innovative, and very, I want to say, when it comes down to improving, it's mind blowing.
Yeah. Chris has an amazing ear. I don't know anybody with quite as good of an ear as Chris has. It's really just something else. But I know you guys have known each other. I mean, we've all known each other for a long time, but you guys go back quite a ways playing instruments together. I'm curious, the whole 5 Amp Fuse experience, I don't really think there were a lot of other garage bands in our high school. We've talked about this on other shows, but we were a very small school. The concert band was very small. The marching band was very small. The chorus was small. I think you guys were actually one of the only garage bands at the time. So I'm curious as to how you all got together and decided, hey, we're going to start a band. And, I'm not really sure which one of you kind of wants to start on that and give us a little insight. Yeah. All right, Ted, go ahead.
I don't mind that. So, I mean, obviously, we've been friends for many, many years. And so one of the reasons that I wound up picking up guitar was I wound up going to a art exhibit at the Museum of Fine Arts, and it was called The Art of the Guitar. And I went with our friend Kevin, and then a couple of weeks later I went again with my dad, and I was just blown away. And with my dad already playing guitar, I was like, you know what, I want to play guitar. And so wound up acquiring a Strat that I still have, as you'll see in many of the pictures I'm sure we'll be tagging in later on. But so I got my Squire Strat, and then I was talking with Matt at school, and I said, hey man, like, I know you already have a guitar. I just got one too. And Matt said, we should make a band. And I was like, that seems cool. I've had the guitar for 3 weeks. I have no idea what I'm doing. but I'm completely down to play in a band. So the two of us sitting at the lunch table, we're like, all right, sweet, we're going to be in a band. That's great. What else we need? We need a bass player and a drummer, and we didn't know anybody that played those instruments in our circle. And then
we wanted to be in a band.
That's right. The mission was a band, and so I remember Chris coming over to the lunch table. It was like, "Hey, what's up, guys? Get sitting down, eating lunch, whatnot." And we're like, "Dude, we're starting a band." And Chris was completely on board. He's like, "What instrument do you need?" And we're like, "Bass." He's like, "No problem." Then it feels like the very next day he got a bass from his brother, and he already was playing. And
wow.
It was just immediate. So like, all right, great. We've got 2 guitars and a bass. We need a drummer. Turns out our first drummer for our band was Chris's next door neighbor, Derek. And so we wound up figuring out, what type of songs we wanted to play. At that time, punk, we were in the punk music end of things, Green Day, Blink-182, whatnot. And Nirvana's Smell Like Teen Spirit was one of the first songs we tackled as well. And so we just wound up practicing at Derek's house for a bit to kind of tee it all together. So, I mean, that's in a nutshell, just a matter of the mission was being in a band. We didn't know how to play our instruments yet because we just were figuring stuff out. But I mean, that was really the main driver because, as you said, there weren't any garage bands. I mean, I remember going to a pep rally, I think when we were in like 8th grade, there was a band, but they were like seniors and they were already moving out. So by freshman year, there was no garage band for anyone out of the whole high school. So not like that was a factor of it. We wanted to be in a band anyway, but it turned out during our 4 years of high school, we were definitely, I believe, the only garage band that actually did anything big.
The only one in existence at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, and that's really interesting because I actually didn't know you guys had another drummer. There's only one drummer that you had that I knew of, which was the other Chris.
Right.
So I think it's really amazing that most of you were not playing the instruments that you played until, I mean, Ted, you were a few weeks before you guys started the band, and Chris, I didn't realize you picked up the bass because of the band. That's just really mind-blowing to me.
It was a great moment of just kind of like on the fly, let's do this. The Derek was, for the time being, and of course being very, very new to starting the band and starting what is a band, how do you become a band, really was kind of like an experience. But of course, like as we know, being in bands, people move on and there's no hard feelings and all that. So I think Kayla, like when really kind of coming into the picture of like who we were at that time, because of course, like we were all, again, like what you mentioned, we were all friends before the band started. Right. And Derek was more of I think we did like one show with him, one pep rally show with him, which we have a video on. Yep. And at that moment, which was actually funny because it was our very first pep rally show. And again, being in a school that was small, everyone from like the high school to the middle school all combined into this one pep rally. We were like about 350 people. So for that time, that's a lot to us. Sure. And being on our first show, being nervous as hell, that was a show that was like the icebreaker to going ahead and making 5 Amp Fuse become who we were. Sure. One of the things that we also kind of had taken into consideration at that time was, again, remember, we're like maybe at this time from when Ted and I first said, hey, let's start a band till our pep rally, we're
It's
talking
like
about
7
maybe
months.
just, yeah.
I just did the quick math because that was pep rally, obviously football season. So that was the very first, I would say fall of 2001. So I bought my guitar in February, and we're talking September, like had maybe October, whatever month that was. We're talking maybe 7 months of going from never touching a guitar to, hey, we're going to stand up and play in front of 350 people.
Wow.
Super nervous.
One of the things that I fondly remember of that very first show was, we got out there, we were literally in the middle. We weren't like in the middle of the gymnasium, but we were like to the side of the gymnasium so everyone could see us. And at that time, we asked our music teacher, hey, we noticed that there are some speakers in the closet. Can we use the speakers? She said, yeah, sure. So we used speakers. And at that time, we didn't know how or knew that you had to, balance, sound. So we had amps. Okay. We had speakers. We had the PA system. We had everything. We go to set up. Now we're doing a sound check. And of course, I'm going into the mic, and all you hear in the background is just people like, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. So I'm like, oh, what the hell is going on? So I go over, turn the PA up, and then finally said, hey, can you guys hear me? And then the crowd was like excited.
It's not band. Our band's called Fabulous Youth. And we're not quite. All right, is that better? Okay.
Well, they're actually excited to see a garage band for the pretty much kind of regenerating into, for performance. And again, just like what Ted said, this wasn't about just the school's garage band. This was like our band that we just happened to take on being like the garage band of the high school or the school. Right. So that show, it was Derek's first show too. We were practicing all that week. Everything was fine. We played the show. And then all of a sudden there was a moment in time where just Derek stopped. It was mid-song. And we were playing, and all of a sudden we stopped, and I looked over and I said, did something happen? Everything going wrong? And his drum set started slowly moving forward. I think, now I don't know, guys.
He didn't have a carpet on it under his drum set. And so as we were playing the song, as he was hitting the bass drum was pushing the drums further and further away from him until he was finally just towing, a mile away, towing the bass drum. And then he eventually he wanted to stop playing to grab the drums and bring it back to him. But because we had never played before, we're not experienced. The drums stopped. We stopped. We turned. We look at him and we're like, "What happened?" And that was the end of the song because it was just cut. And so everyone just starts clapping. And we're like, "Oh, I guess we're done."
I guess we're done. So at that point, and obviously, now experience later on down the road when you're in a band, okay, even if there's mess ups, you don't let the audience know, and you just keep going on with the flow.
Yeah, so but that was our first experience with it, though. So we were just completely noobs on that.
It was great. It just showed the pure immaturity of our beginning of let's start the band. And later on down the road, it started becoming, a lot more popularized. People started, looking forward to seeing us. Obviously, while there's positive and negatives, we had, some audience members that were kind of like, oh, hey, we're going to go see Green Day tonight. And of course, it's us because we were always playing a lot of Green Day, a lot of Blink-182.
Right.
I want to say that's probably the majority of the songs. And kind of reflecting back, I kind of see now where it's kind of like, okay, maybe we were kind of like a little bit of a cover band. Again, we didn't know.
Complete cover band.
Yeah,
So-
Until much later.
we were the cover band of Green Day and Blink-182, which later on down the road, okay, they ended up actually having the tour together. But
Because of us, right? It was our doing. We brought, yeah, right.
you're welcome, guys. So,
The revival
I
of the
actually-
90s.
I have actually a kind of a funny story that you guys Ted may not know this at all. Chris and Matt may not remember it. So Chris and Matt, I don't know if you guys remember, we were in some sort of an MCAS class together, and there was a day that we were sitting in the library, and I don't know what prompted Chris to bring it up, but I remember him saying something. I want to say he suggested that you guys play Enter Sandman by Metallica.
Yes,
And
yes,
I
I remember that.
distinctly remember Matt's response was, dude, we don't play that shit. And to this day, that's still something that pops into my mind from time to time, because, as you said, you guys were very much Green Day, Blink-182, a couple of Bush songs. That was pretty much it. And it's funny now because Ted's like the king of death metal, and we all listened to metal. And at the time, metal was more my forte. And, you know, interestingly enough, and I don't know if you guys knew this either, but Green Day, Blink-182, those guys were not my favorite bands by any means, but because you guys were my friends and that's what you played, you know, I always supported that and everything. But I think there's a reason that throughout high school, you know, I remember we got together and played a few times, but it wasn't like now, where now we have the jam sessions and we all get together and there's varying interests in different genres of music, and everybody's musical tastes have evolved over the years. But at that time, I was very much heavy metal, and you guys were very much Blink-182, Green Day, punk kind of stuff.
There's a reason
and,
for that too, because the songs are easy to play.
Right.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
when you're playing a new instrument that you want to impress people with, you're going to pick some of the easier songs, because there are plenty of songs that, oh, that one would be really cool, but I'm just not technical enough on the guitar to play this Offspring song or whatever.
Sure.
Like, you know, that's a major factor in why some of those songs were selected.
Sure.
It's just because we could play them.
Sure.
Because we were still new at our instruments. And now,
Right.
as you say, you know, but fast forward 15, 20 years, we've been playing our stuff for a long time.
Right.
which I have respect for Metallica now. Enter Sandman.
Yeah, but now we can totally play those songs because we're actually good at our
Very
instruments
true.
now.
Except, and I will stick to my guns, I'm not a fan of Saint Anger. So we'll
I will agree with you. I will
That's
agree with you on that. Yeah, I can agree with you on that one.
All right,
That didn't exist.
Me as well.
Slamming it against a trash can, and there you go. You got Sandman. I'm sorry. You got Saint Anger. Wow. Woo. But yeah. Oh wow, Kayla. Yeah, I definitely remember that. Holy crap.
We don't play that shit. It's just like,
And of course,
okay.
and of
I'm
course,
like, that's all I play.
exactly. I mean, man. And of course, at that time, you know, we were listening to AAF like it was, you know, we wake up and go to sleep with it and whatnot.
Right.
So, of course, if God forbid the guys over at AAF ever heard that, God, I'd be like, you know, crucified. But, oh man, but yeah, obviously love Metallica. Again, actually, what really sparked me getting more into Metallica was, Kayla, we referenced in a previous episode, I believe it was our concerts episode of the Summer Sanitarium tour.
Right.
And when we went to go see them, and I think just seeing them in the flesh and, you know, just a live performance just
Right.
made me have a really different type of perspective on who Metallica was.
Right. And Harris was with us at that show as well.
Yeah, I did go to that show.
Yeah.
That was a really fun concert.
Yeah.
Really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
One of the things that, you know, so of course, you know, that was obviously our first experience in, you know, as a band in our shows. And obviously later on down the road we had, multiple shows to another previous episode that we spoke on was Ted mentioned about the talent show and that we had to go do a show literally right after
change our drummers at that point. So let's kind of, for the sake of history, Derek was a couple years younger than us, and he was also into sports. So I think as much as he had time during the summer and we were able to jam on a pretty regular basis to perform that pep rally, I think it really came down to prioritization of sports over needing to be able to commit to a band, which obviously bands take commitment. And so that put us on a search for another drummer, and that's how we landed on the other Chris to kind of fill in that spot for us. And so that's how that transition happened. So Derek was with us for, I think, 8 months as our drummer, as we had our bands, and then for the remainder, of the band's life, I would say, a couple of years, we added the other Chris in on drums. So
very true.
That transition happened. So now we can fast forward to these other shows that we actually had a new drummer with.
The transition was pretty smooth too, and of course, at that time we completely understood. And I mean, Derek ended up becoming a great athlete, not only for the school but also for the town as well. And I think, we obviously don't really catch up one up, but I do vaguely remember that it was sports and then kind of music, and that's what really made us go ahead. And especially after that show, it was kind of like is this going to work or is it not? And, just friendly parted ways. Hey, you know what? Appreciate the time, but I'm going to kind of focus on something else. But yeah, that's where, Chris jumped in. I don't know about you guys, but I remember, especially during practices, a lot of them over at Ted's, where we have to, and I remind everyone, okay, this is like, freshman year of high school. Obviously we didn't have licenses at that time. Yeah. But how do we go ahead? Yeah. How do we go ahead and really be dedicated to this band? Obviously we need to practice. So of course we had our parents go ahead and drive us here and there. Well, sometimes if parents weren't available, okay, we had another type of transportation, 2 ways, either walking or taking a bike. I don't know about you guys, but being dedicated to this band, I did whatever it took to go ahead and make sure that we had practices. So there were times where I rode my bike. I had my guitar on my strap, so it looked like I was carrying a sword. Okay,
I was across your back. I remember this.
Taking my bike, mastering how to ride a bike around the other side of town, because that's where Ted lived. All right, I lived at that time across the street from the high school. Ted lived on the edge of I want to say
it was probably from there. I think it was 3-4 miles away. Yeah,
3 or 4 miles. So to remind you, okay, freshman year, have the guitar on strapped like a sword, riding with one hand and carrying my amp, my solid state amp, which was 2 speakers, from my house to Ted's house just to practice. And dude, I will tell you this. Obviously, God bless your parents. Seriously, love them to death. They're second parents to me, because it was again, 3-4 miles as freshmen riding a bike. And then when we were done practice, okay, it was pitch black. So I remember Ted's parents would give me a ride back home. Because God forbid, if I'm riding back on the other side of town with a friggin' amp, okay.
It's a black amp with a black gig bag for your guitar to it's dark. That would never fly.
Yeah. No. But that's what in my mind, what dedication was about. And not only that, but not only did it give an opportunity to go ahead and practice as musicians, okay, but also gave an opportunity to go ahead and spend time with friends as well. So
that was definitely a win-win. Hanging out, but we're still accomplishing a goal that we wanted to do anyway. So definitely a big factor. I feel like once we had Chris as our drummer, we spent a lot of time practicing over at his house. Obviously, you tend to go where the drums are. So I just recall so many practices at our drummer's house, just because, I mean, I look back at how often we were practicing 3 times a week, 4 times a week.
Yep.
And just spending all that time, and how much we improved during that time, and creating out a 20-song set list. I bet that's at one point, we had so many songs in our repertoire at that point, that certainly we were ready to start doing shows, and more than just the pep rally, although we did basically every single pep rally throughout high school, which is feather in the cap to us. But, we did that. And then also, I feel like the highlight of our garage band career was summer of 2002 was a big summer, because I believe that was the summer that we played at the town's 4th of July celebration, which was pretty wild, because this is our first outdoor gig with the public, because it's not in the school gymnasium anymore. So that was pretty exciting. Kayla's parents were on the 4th of July committee, and kind of put in a word in for us. And town paid us $200 to play for 4th of July for, I forget how long they gave us a window. And that experience was pretty fun, getting us set up on the back of a 18-wheeler flatbed and trailer, and get to play for people in the afternoon.
I want to say that was like our first paid gig too.
It was definitely.
Absolutely.
I remember when all of our hair was dyed different colors too. That was pretty cool. We took this spray and we sprayed our hair red and white and blue, and it was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, and because I was on one side, I had red. Chris, I think you were blue, and Matt was the lead singer. You had all 3, red, white, and blue, and we stood on the side of the color of your hair. And the drummer sprayed his hair white, which was also hilarious because it made him look old. But we were joking about that too. But there's definitely lots of pictures about that, because that was our first public performance that we wound up doing too.
Right. Rewinding a little bit back, Chris, why don't you talk to us? So when you first came to us and said, "Hey, I want to be in your guys' band," walk us through what was the bass that you got? What was the amp that you got? How did you go ahead and say, we were in your shoes? What did you first do when Ted and I were like, yeah, we need a bass player? What happened from that point on, which literally the next day you came back with a bass? What was your gear?
Well, I remember asking my brother about it, and I was like, you know what, I'm interested in playing the bass guitar. And he ends up giving me this left-handed encore bass that I played right-handed. Yeah. And I learned off of that, and it was quite an interesting experience, trying to learn songs with a left-handed bass. And then I ended up picking up a small micro PV amp and just practicing from that. And I was just trying to play as much as possible, hours and hours a day, just to try to get better as a bass player. And when I first started off, it was a rocky thing, just sounded like mush. But but then when I started really listening to different things, it started turning into cohesion. It started sounding a lot better. And I think me wanting to be the bass player of the band, it brought forth the bottom end and everything, and what we, for that type of sound and for that type of style that we're playing with the pop punk stuff, it worked out really good. It did. It was pretty fun.
Right.
Still an experience that to this day, I keep thinking about all the time when I'm playing bass. It's what, I remember when I had that left-handed encore bass that just was out of tune. fret was off.
That left-handed encore, as much as it was left-handed, it was also strung correctly to be played right-handed. So just for anyone listening, it wasn't a complete Jimi Hendrix scenario.
Right. I didn't have to play like upside down or something.
What would you say?
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, Chris. So can you recall, maybe the first bass pedal that you got for the band? I know that one of the very interesting aspects of being in this band was I was very fond of distortion. And Ted, you may remember this, but when we first started, before I got the solid state, I had this regular, I want to say like 12-inch speaker cabinet that was just clean. It didn't feature any type of a distortion aspect to it. And the only thing I could remember was my dad gave me a chorus pedal, and trying to understand, like, hey, how the hell do I use this for like Blink-182 stuff or Green Day stuff? And obviously it just didn't work out. But Ted had what was like the Strat Pack that came with the amp.
Oh yeah, it was a Squire. I mean, that was the all-in-one, package. It was called the Strat Pack. Yep. So I had, I think it was a 15-watt practice amp, basically, but it had distortion built in. Just press the button and you're able to play it.
Right.
And I remember saying, actually, after playing that and hearing that, being like, yes, that's the sound. And I think it was like that weekend I had to go to my dad and be like, I need something that has like that distorted sound. He's like, oh, so you want distortion, like overdrive? Or at that time he was saying, oh, so you want like a dirty channel? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Rewind it. I was saying, I need a dirty channel. He goes, so you want distortion? I go, no, I want a dirty channel. Something. He goes, yeah, Matt, it's distortion. Okay. Again, remember.
A dirty channel.
That's got a whole different meaning these days.
God, I want a dirty channel. So, of course, he went out and got me like a Fender Champion amp, and obviously had that distortion aspect. And then we were really able to go ahead and full out our sound. But it's so kind of fast forwarding one. I know we had to talk, with Chris about, kind of like the back end story about what happened after Ted and I talked with him to say, hey, go and get a. Pretty much we pretty much told Chris, hey, go get a bass, and he's like, sure, I'm on it. So yeah, we could go on and on and kind of fast forward back to that pep rally show. Ted, actually, in some of the pictures, you're playing a different guitar. So could you explain, like?
Well, so for the 4th of July show, you mean? Because obviously, in preparation for this, we were looking through the different shows and pictures that we had, and definitely noticed that I believe that either I wound up playing one song, like we were set up or getting ready to set up, and I played 1 or 2 songs with my Strat, and then looking at the pictures, I am playing Kayla's Ibanez. And I didn't remember needing to change strings or change guitars, but I can only imagine that a string was broken at some point, and there was no time to take it apart and get it restrung. So fortunately, Kayla had her guitar there as a backup for safety's sake. We needed it. Yep. So definitely wound up using it too.
So my guitar was there because I played Star Spangled Banner at the beginning of the whole thing. So I had my guitar with me, and then
totally forgot that too.
Yeah, back in those days, we didn't have our roadies and our guitar techs. So it was basically if your string broke in the middle of the gig, and we were all high school students, and we were all relatively poor and could not afford to have multiple guitars at the time. And so we all had one guitar. That was pretty much it. And if your one guitar had a string break, you didn't have somebody who could change it in 5 seconds and hand it back to you. So you were either out of luck, or you had to stop and change it, or you had to hope that somebody else was there with a guitar that you could hand off. So I think I just kind of said, here, take my guitar. And and you played the rest of the set with my guitar. But, you know, it also reminds me, back in the day, Chris was also really notorious for being the only bass player I've ever known that could snap bass strings because he played so hard.
That's a feat in itself.
That's true.
Yeah, it happened quite a bit, and unfortunately, there weren't a lot of other bass players that you could just be like, "Oh, here, take my bass." So if Chris snapped a bass string, it was pretty much like, "Hey, time out, gotta fix this." But yeah, I distinctly remember that was a very common issue back then.
Oh, the jokes of Chris breaking his G
G-string.
Chris broke his
man.
G-string.
That's right.
Well,
That doesn't happen these days.
No.
Well, for the audience that's listening and whatnot, you know, Ted, I, and Chris went, you know, round robins a lot about the bands, but, you know, Kayla, was there from the very beginning. And, you know, as she mentioned, you know, we were all like friends first, and then, you know, obviously we all grew into musicians. And Kayla, was really a great supporting attribute to 5 AM Fuse. I mean, whenever we had shows, she would be there. You know, she would take some pictures. You know, she would go ahead and, you know, I wish I had it with me right now. I was actually trying to find it before the show. But she ended up, you know, being an administrator for our website back then, too, if you guys remember.
Good old GeoCities website.
Is that what it was?
It was a GeoCities.
And she would update, like, you know, the public or anyone that was following us at that time or subscribe at that time, like what we were doing, you know. So whether it was, hey, the guys are practicing, you know, maybe 3 new songs for an upcoming show, to you know, we eventually, you know, wrote a song at some point, you know, called Tragedy Sky. We wrote other multiple songs too that I just don't want to mention, okay? But the public knows exactly what I'm talking about, but we don't have to go there. So,
Yeah, but I mean, but that was also, you know, after we did our performance in the 4th of July celebration, I think that's where everything really picked up. We wanted to get the website. Kayla helped put that together. We did more or less a photo shoot for some, like, our cover, you know, pictures, which is on the t-shirt, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But, you know, we wound up taking the band basically a whole another step, because we got our first paying gig. That's great. Right. That's awesome. And, you know, we were definitely more dedicated, and, you know, having that experience behind us, that we played at a block party that our drummer's relative had at one point. So we got to play for a bunch of people at a block party. Our friends at that point, you know, we were always playing the pep rallies, but then, you know, oh, I want you to play at my birthday party, or, you know, so we did 2 different birthday parties, and, you know, got to perform in those situations too. And parents were generous and paid us for our gig time there too. So between,
I know who you are.
Yeah. Thank you again, still. But between those experiences, you know, the band was making, you know, had made, you know, basically $600 within a year of coming together amongst all the different things that we wound up doing. And was pretty exciting. You know, holy crap. Like, now we're buying better gear. We're getting new amps. We're getting more, you know, Chris, you're getting another bass. You don't have to play the encore anymore. You got your, I don't even know what, P bass, maybe?
Yeah, my second one was the Squire P bass, precision bass. Yeah.
Yep. So you got the P bass. I wound up getting Epiphone Les Paul. I know, Matt, you were getting new gear. I mean, it was definitely, you know, motivating of an experience for sure. So all that combined, I think the one of the height things, Matt or Chris, I'm going to tee it up to you for our talent show, and then have that whole day. It was pretty awesome.
Yes, it was, definitely.
I don't know which either one of you wants to, talk about that story.
Sure. So, so we did, we mentioned in the previous episode about the talent show, and we jumped right into a show right afterwards, which I actually said now a second time during this episode. So just as a reminder. And when we did that, at that time, we actually then ended up actually getting our licenses as well, because right afterwards we had to pack our cars up and go to our next show, which actually was featured in a basement. Okay. And had a DJ that pretty much kind of opened up the night, and then he stopped, and then we ended up playing. And I want to say it was a good crowd. It was a good number of people. So the talent show was obviously, I think it was on a Friday, because they always had either pep rallies or they had some sort of a special event either held in the gymnasium or held in the auditorium, which that's where the talent show was, always at the end of the week. And we ended up grabbing a good handful of those people from school coming to that show. And we played a full out set. I want to say it was about, a couple hours worth of a lot of Green Day, a lot of Blink-182.
And that show after, yeah.
No Metallica shit, but I remember one of the at one point in the show, we at that time, studying a lot of these musicians and these bands at that time, like how do you put on a show? And again, a lot of trial and error. Okay, not every show that we had was phenomenal and we won people's hearts. I mean, there were some times where we really screwed up.
Some technical issues.
Yeah, technical issues. Breaking of strings, amps blowing, effects not working, people not available. You name it, it happens. But that show, I remember at the very end, people were getting really into it. And we ended up playing an acoustic version of Green Day's Good Riddance. And it was a closing song to that song. And I remember just everyone, it was kind of like crowded in a circle, like a half circle. And everyone was just singing to the song. And it just really ended the night. But in that moment in time, I really felt like, wow, this is what it really means to be in the band. It really means to be in a band. And really kind of feeding off of the energy that the audience is really reading into. Because at that time, the people that came to our show liked the genre that we were playing. Okay, obviously we had some people out there that, may have come and support us. Okay, which obviously we're forever grateful, for the high end support. And we also had the group that really liked hearing a lot of the Green Day, a lot of the Blink-182 stuff. So we had kind of a mixture of everything all together. And at the very end of that show and ending the night with that song left a awesome permanent memory, just showing that that's a show that we really took to heart. And it was definitely wow, this is kind of like almost like the life of the rock star, obviously without the sex, drug, and rock and roll, but
just the rock and roll.
Oh, just the rock and roll.
You can't forget about the rock and roll.
We can't talk about the drug. No, I'm just kidding. But it was really that moment in time where it was a kind of like a surreal moment. Like, yeah, I think this is going to work. I think this is really going to work, especially after, a year of doing this and putting in the hard work. And, for those that are listening and thinking about starting up a band, okay, whether you're in high school still or, you're about to retire, okay, take it from us. Okay, so the way that we took 5 Amp Fuse was literally a friend-to-friend conversation, an idea, and we put in the work, and we eventually ended up having multiple memories of just great times playing in front of people. I mean, there are some audience people that are probably listening to this saying, yeah, I remember that show specifically. And if you remember anything of any of our shows that we played at, that you would like to share with us, obviously, let us know, because we would love to obviously reminisce with you. We are getting older, so we do forget shit. We but,
it happens when it's like 20 years ago.
Pretty much 20 years ago. And then after this, 10 years before, and when we listen to this podcast, it'll be 30 years. That's right. Let us know, because, I mean, as much as it meant a lot to us, okay, the audience, you guys coming to our shows, okay, you guys mean a lot to us. And, you know, we wouldn't be a band, okay, if it weren't for the audience that came to come and, you know, just enjoy the music that we played. Again, we are the type of people that just like to play out and entertain personnel. We like to go ahead and, you know, we, at that time, okay, we were learning songs that people were saying, hey, why don't you go ahead and play it? We, to some certain degree, as long as it was pop punk, we were learning.
Not Metallica.
No, I swear. The guys are going to like listen to this and be like, screw those guys. So, but, you know, that is what was 5 Amp Fuse was about. We were just this regular garage band that started off as a conversation. I mean, Dave Grohl of the Foo Fighters, you know, even Nirvana back then too, said that you don't need to have all these instruments. Okay, you don't need to be known as someone. All you need, if you have a broken guitar with a broken amp and you're just with your great friends, that's what success is in being in a band. It's just about enjoying the time. It's about, you know, it's on your time. And if people like it, that's great. If people don't like it, that's great too. Again, we're not all perfect. We're not all subjected to like in one style. Okay, you know, you're going to have people that, you know, may like hip hop. They're not going to like Blink-182 stuff. You're going to like people that are going to like the soft part of Blink-182 stuff, but they're not going to like the hard part of Blink-182 stuff. So again, that's what, you know, to us, at least for me, knew what, you know, 5 Amp Fuse was back then. You know, that's what really kind of like the pivot point to where I am now, and being, you know, incredibly grateful that the musician I am today obviously started off with, you know, these three personnel that are on the show. Okay, we're all friends. We ended up being musicians, which I feel kind of I feel did grow us stronger together. I mean, even to this day, 20 years later, even though we may not be in bands, okay, we're getting together to still jam out. Okay, and just jam and have a good time. Okay, have a couple of drinks here and there. Okay, talk about, you know, an album that came out, to talking about just, you know, improvising with maybe a synthesizer, or talking about Pizza Hut. Okay, which will probably be another episode. But that's what 5 Amp Fuse was about. It was about, you know, camaraderie, entertainment, and more importantly, growth. So again, whoever's listening to this, if you're thinking about joining a band, if you're thinking about starting up a band, just friggin' do it. Okay, nothing stops you. Just do it.
The social distance, but start practicing now, and then when it's all over, you can go ahead and do that.
Right. No, I've had so many conversations with people throughout the whole quarantine that have mentioned, you know, I'm thinking about picking up a guitar, but, you know, I just don't know if I can do it. And I always tell them, now is the perfect time to pick up an instrument. I mean, first of all, what else are you doing? And second of all, guitar and bass are probably two of the easier instruments to be able to learn, because you don't need to know how to read music to be able to play songs.
Yep.
You know, not to say, I mean, you could play other instruments and not know how to read music too, but with guitar and bass, you know, there's tabs out there. So you can easily learn how to play songs, and there's a lot of different, you know, simple songs that are really popular, cool songs, that people are familiar with. And so, you know, now is the perfect time to pick up an instrument and learn how to play. And when things get to a point where it's safe to resume playing with other people, you know, put your name out there on Craigslist or on, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of other platforms where musicians can kind of meet up and get together and just play with other people. Because I think if one thing has been made clear by this particular episode, it's that you don't need to know how to play the instrument already. You don't need to be an expert in playing the instrument. You just need to have motivation and a willingness to learn, and, you know, a willingness to put in the time. And you can play, and you can play with other people, and you can have fun, and you can improve as you go, and anybody at any age can do it. So, you know, don't be discouraged by that. hopefully that's the message that maybe some people have taken away from this episode. Even if you don't play an instrument, pick one up if you're thinking about it. Pick it up.
Right.
And I was going to just move the timeline towards the end of, closing the loop on the 5-amp fuse era, unless there's any other stories you guys want to mention.
I do have one question.
Sure.
Does anybody remember the story behind the logo?
Yeah, I made it.
But that was you, Ted?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That was MS Paint. Freehand MS Paint.
Iron on, guys. That's
Answers that question. We tried all sorts of different. I have numerous color variations of that logo.
Oh, really?
I do. Yeah, it's in my folder in storage. I just gotta fish them out.
So
I noticed it kind of fits your hair color theme from the 4th of July too.
Yeah.
The one on the shirt
That was a
anyway.
coincidence.
For the people who aren't watching, you can't see it, but it's basically gray, blue, and red.
Yes.
Yep. Now, quick 30-second short 30-second story and whatnot. Again, we're high school. Okay, some of us had jobs, some of us didn't. $200 at that show, okay, meant a lot to us.
Sure.
And at that time, we started looking into merchandise. So people that were starting to follow us were like, hey, I think I had a good handful of people be like, hey, you guys give me T-shirts, because T-shirts was pretty big back then. Actually, still, some of them are still now, okay, when you go to a show. And I remember that you couldn't just order one shirt or order like maybe 10 shirts. You had to order a bulk. And at that time, okay, it was like $300-400 at a minimum with color. Okay. And depending on the type of shirt too. So if you wanted like white, it was like maybe $350. If you wanted a shirt that was like black, it was like $400. Okay. Yes. Color depended on price too. So at that time, I remember, crap, what the hell can we do in order to really get something out there? And I remember going to like a Walmart and seeing that you could go ahead and print on this paper, which was an iron-on. Okay, and I believe, Kayla, that's the shirt that we did. We took a regular white T-shirt.
I think my dad actually helped me make this one.
Oh, he did. Okay, well, we did something similar where we did iron-ons, and I think it was that same one. But I think the one.
Oh, it's even got a back. Get out of here.
The back had the logo, and so what you can't see if you're listening is, I think what we learned with the front is that, and it doesn't really show up on camera, I don't think, we didn't cut out around the logo. So this shirt is 20 some odd years old, and the iron-on part has kind of yellowed around the logo on the front. And I think we learned for the back not to do that because you could see the square. So I had actually cut out around the logo, but then your names are also like, because it would have been kind of hard to cut out around your names. So the names are also kind of blocky, and 20 years of existence. It's actually, so I actually went over to my storage unit yesterday and pulled this out for the show because I knew you guys were looking for your shirts and couldn't find them, and I was like, I
don't have one.
I knew I did not get rid of mine. I knew I had it.
I knew that we did something with the T-shirt. I know that for a fact. Kayla, if your dad did that one, then I think we must have done like 2 variations of one, because I definitely remember one night printing it and then literally ironing on and being like, This is awesome. We have a band T-shirt. Then obviously you're thinking back now, if you're in the band, you don't wear your own band T-shirt. It's kind of weird. It's like,
we were just so excited.
Exactly.
Sure.
Like being in the band Disturbed and wearing a Disturbed T-shirt doesn't work that way.
Right.
But a lot of reminiscing.
Yeah.
Right.
Chris, do you have any other stories you can think of? Any other times?
I just remember there was one show that we did where we were outside, and I think it was outside of Kayla's place, parents' place, and then we were playing so loud that.
Oh, we lost Chris.
Oh no!
The internet stopped. No, Chris.
He finally goes to tell a story and he drops out. I have a feeling I know where this story is going to. And just while we wait to see if his internet comes back, I really don't even think we were playing as loud as it may sound like we were based off of the story he's about to tell. I just have neighbors who didn't like our music.
I can't help it, but Kayla, can we do a still frame of just what like Harris is right now? It's just funny how it's like still. There we go.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
There he is.
There he is.
He's muted, though. You're muted.
Oh man, that was too fun. But yeah, it was. I'm curious to see what. No, welcome back, Chris. There we go.
Yes, he
thank you.
froze.
Yes, I did. I had some unstable internet connection. Sorry about that, guys.
That's okay.
So,
But as I was, yeah.
so what were you
As
gonna
I,
say?
as I was saying, I remember us playing so loud that, and it was only 6 or 7 p.m., that every one of Kayla's neighbors ended up calling the police. And before we knew it, we had to stop what we were doing, and the police showed up, and they were like, you guys need to turn it down. There's multiple noise complaints. Like,
I don't even. It's
such a bummer.
I think you might have dropped out, and I was explaining to Matt and Ted in our audience that I'm not even sure we were actually playing all that loud. My neighbors didn't like listening to the music and didn't want to hear it. And we actually had another occasion where we were outside and it was like 2 p.m. and the cops showed up. And I remember my dad getting really pissed about it because he was like, my dad had been on the planning board and he had been involved in town politics. And he was like, tell me where in the town's noise ordinance it says that they can't be out here playing their instruments at this volume level at this time of day, when at the time we had neighbors next door who were riding their dirt bikes all hours of the morning, noon, night, and we were quite sure that their exhaust system wasn't stock, and it was loud and it was obnoxious. And if we called the cops, they'd show up in front of our house and make sure that it was known that it was us that called before they went over. Like, I think there's been a turnover in the police department, so people don't know the neighbors as well as the police then used to. But yeah, we had the cops show up on more than one occasion, and it wasn't even like we were being all that disruptive to people compared to some of the stuff that we had to put up with. But like, there was also an incident not related to the band, but Ted, I don't know if you remember this. We used to play flashlight tag, and my neighbor across the street ended up calling the police because it was nighttime and she saw flashlights outside and there'd been a rash, I guess, of break-ins in cars in the neighborhood, and she was afraid that it was people breaking in. And so, Ted, your dad showed up to pick you up just as the police cruiser was pulling up the street, and we're all standing in my front yard at the time. We had a split rail fence there. We're hanging out on the fence, and all of a sudden the cruiser pulls up with the spotlight on us, and here comes Ted's dad right behind him like, what's going on here? And then my neighbor comes across the street and she's like, oh God, I am so sorry. I thought you guys were breaking into cars. I saw the flashlights. Our car was broken into the other night. I got nervous. I called the police. Guys, there's no problem here. It's just, we know them. It's cool. And the police kind of went on their way. But yeah, the police visited this house a lot for things that weren't even, like, we weren't really doing anything wrong. But I do remember them showing up a number of times because we were out playing music and my neighbors didn't appreciate that. So, yeah.
They weren't a fan of Blink-182 or Green Day. Or
I guess not.
They might have been Metallica fans.
They might have preferred the metal shit. They might have preferred the metal shit.
Just throw the blame over here. I'll take it.
Nice. All right. So to kind of end the 5-amp fuse era, as much as we were performing and continue to play, one of our last performances, we wound up playing with a couple of other bands at one of the town rented halls that you could rent in town. And so there were 2 or 3 other bands. One of our friends in high school was a singer of this other band, and that's how we got affiliated and got put on the bill for that. And so we wound up playing at that show, and that was one of the coolest ones because there were lights and a sound guy, and it was far more legitimate of a show than anything we had done thus far, because usually we were in control of our own PA or having to deal with the levels. There's a sound guy, and he's just got his own sound booth. He's just mixing away and whatever. And so we wound up having that really cool experience, lights and everything, and there was a fair number of people in there for that show. But I just remember that gig going it started off fine, but then it went sideways. Like, I don't know what happened. And I just remember getting off the stage and being like, that was the worst. Like, I just didn't feel that we did a good job, or, it wasn't just not a good night for us, whatever reason. And just feeling rather disheartened by it. I think there was some disagreement with our drummer at that time in conjunction with that over, I don't even remember what now, but basically that was their last performance as 5-Amp Fuse, and I just remember going back to high school, and we basically all sat down at lunch with the drummer, and we more or less came to terms that this isn't going to work out.
Yeah.
And so that kind of ended the 5-Amp Fuse era, because we didn't have a drummer anymore. And so, I mean, I don't know what else you want to add to that, because I think that transition kind of teed me into wanting to learn drums, because no one in our circle knew how to play drums. So that's where that interest for that instrument for me came in, because it later transitioned to us. I mean, obviously we still play music, but going through that experience in 5-Amp Fuse and not having a drummer anymore really had me kind of fill in that spot so we could continue to keep on jamming in our circle. But that, I don't know what else you remember from that, Matt or Chris.
Yeah. So to add to that, obviously, before that was happening, the drummer at that time we started noticing that the commitment level wasn't really at par to, Ted Harris or I were at.
Commitment was good, but it definitely had waned, or it had drifted off.
So
at that point too.
So like, take for instance, I know that when our friend came to us and was like, "Hey, I'm having a show and it was actually in Shirley. Love to have you guys be a part of the bill." We said, "Sure, sounds great." And when we started, of course, like with every show coming up, we would always practice, even like almost like 2 times or 3 times more than what we were normally doing. So Remember, at the beginning, we were practicing like 3-4 times a week, just in the beginning, just to get a little more experience. Obviously, later on down the road, now like a year, okay, that 3-4 times a week started turning out to be like, okay, maybe 1, maybe 2, depending on the time too as well. So, but whenever we had a show, we would always go back to that 3-4 times a week. So the past couple shows beforehand, which really kind of this last show was like the cherry on top. I want to say we may have like practiced like once as a group, and Harris, I, and Ted obviously still got together and still practiced the best that we could. But the commitment level we felt was kind of like, from his end, kind of going a little bit down forward. And I think the result of what happened at that show really kind of came to light, which was like, okay, either you're going to be in it or you're not. And it ended up just kind of being like, just parting ways. But on a positive note, okay, if there was anything great about that show was when, guys, if you remember, we collaborated with our friend in his band.
We played Chop Suey.
We played Chop Suey.
We did.
And it was like, hell broke out. Okay, because we started we started up little mosh pits, and obviously there had to be like people to kind of go and break it up. But when we played Chop Suey and collaborated with them, it was like it was incredibly fun. I took it as incredibly fun because obviously it was our first collaboration with the band with other bands, but two, again, kind of that surreal moment of like if we were like real rock stars playing in front of thousands and thousands of people. Okay, bands that were on the tour would collaborate together. So again, it was kind of like another like rock star moment. Like, wow, these bands are playing together. What song are they playing? Oh, we're playing Chop Suey, and we played the shit out of it. And we started again. It started little mosh pits, which would go ahead and kind of obviously break up because the area that we played at only had so much room. So his band brought his following. We brought our following. And, then obviously, kind of it shifted off later on down the road. And then, that's where Ted was aiming at and whatnot. But that was definitely probably that was a good positive note to that show, which was the collaboration of his band and our band playing Chop Suey. And it was just phenomenal. It was wicked fun.
Yep.
Awesome.
And so, then the band dissipated and I learned drums and we had numerous column bands. I mean, we continued to perform through the rest of the high school. We still did pep rallies, but I was doing drums, but we didn't use the 5 Views name because we weren't necessarily doing just the Blink-182 Green Day stuff anymore. Because by that point, we're a couple years in, we're adding new songs to the mix. We wound up playing a Korn song at one pep rally. So the music on the set list was changing as we went forward from there. So, but again, our skills were better because we continued to play. So, as an era of 5 Views, it definitely fast tracked our guitar, bass, drum experience. But yeah, I think in a nutshell, 5 Views, it was a good run.
It was a good run.
It definitely was a good run, yes.
And I think later on down the road, there was talks of in which I've had a few people reach out, and especially for our 10-year reunion, some old classmates being like, "Hey, is the band playing?" And we're like, "No." But it did spark an interest to have a possible one-night reunion show in which obviously, is still in the air, I think, as far as time. Obviously, it would have to deal a lot with, planning out. But there are some of our classmates that did reach out and say, hey, you guys ever thinking about doing a 5 Views reunion show? And I mean, obviously,
to be fair, 5 Views started in 2001.
Yep.
So next year is 20 years.
20 years. I mean,
that's just an old. I hate saying that.
I mean,
20
maybe,
years.
Maybe it might happen. The door is obviously not shut.
We all know how to still play those songs.
Yeah, we still can play those songs. Obviously, we could add some newer stuff like some Taylor Swift. Just kidding. We're not going to play Taylor Swift.
We could add Metallica.
We could add Metallica.
You sure you're playing that now?
But you never know. So, if audience is listening to this episode and, have fond memories of when we were in 5 Views and would love to see us, play another show. I mean, obviously we'd be open for it.
And actually, let me just point out, for anyone that is listening and recalls any of the shows or recalls any stories, any of that, or have pictures or video or any of that, I know we do have a good collection of video from which will probably tie into this, just to have as an example for some of those shows. But if anyone has any pictures or any of that, I'd be more than happy to see it. Send it to our Distorted Opinions email, and definitely want to hear what people remember, because it's 20 years old. Ugh. And we may not remember as much. So
Of course. So other than that, guys, I know, I mean, obviously we could continue going on and on and on about, multiple stories, the behind the scenes, as if this was a VH1 episode. But
I was going to say, Chris, do you have any other thoughts? Anything else? Yeah.
Chris,
I feel like we've done a lot of talking, and Chris hasn't really had the floor too often. But what do you have any other stories that you can remember?
I mean, I only remember, like, at one point there was one rehearsal we had at Chris's house, our old drummer, and he ended up getting. We were playing and we were practicing, and I ended up picking up his BC Rich guitar and was like, "Hey, I play guitar too." And then after about a few seconds later, I snapped about 2 of the strings on it, and he was not happy. He definitely was like, please don't play my guitar ever again. I'm like, "Hey, do you want me to replace those strings for you?" He's like, "Well, no, please don't touch my guitar again." I'm like, "Well, next time, I guess I'll just stick to playing the bass then, in that case."
I'll keep on snapping my strings on the bass.
Yes. And I'll replace those.
Oh, jeez.
So, yeah, when we were talking earlier about the times we practiced and everything, that came to mind, and I was like, I remember that. He was not too happy with me at the time, and I apologize if you're listening to this now and you see it. Chris, so sorry about your BC Rich guitar snapping those 2 strings and not replacing them. That was the salt in the wound.
Well, hey, now you have time to replace
I'm sorry about that.
But Harrison, actually, to add to that one and whatnot, I mean, there were fond memories of us practicing at your parents' place.
Yeah,
there was like no time limit at your parents. So, I mean, God bless them too, because I mean, we were like jam out till like 11 o'clock midnight on a school night.
Yes, we could. We were allowed to do that. And my parents were very lenient about that kind of stuff. And actually my neighbors at the time were very lenient too. They didn't really care. And my mom actually my mother really liked it. And my father would just sleep in the chair and watch his Star Trek. So it was at least calming and peaceful to him as well. And
as loud as it was.
Yes, as loud as it was like, but yeah, like we were able to play hours and hours on end, and that was and do whatever we wanted to. We're jumping around like crazy people in a small house. And I thought at one moment the fan was going to come down many times, but in
the ceiling fan. Yeah.
Now, guys, anyone who's listening, okay, being in a band, all right, we also improv'd a lot. Okay, yes. So we came up with some crazy stuff. So even though we were practicing, covers, we never just went ahead, set up, and just played these covers over and over and over again. I mean, we would also improv too, which also led us down the road to go ahead and creating our first song for the 5 Amp Fuse called Tragedy Sky. And, but before that, Ted, I believe that you have a whole record of all these different types of improv, recordings that we did.
And so those recordings are actually a little bit later. That's like post 5 Amp Fuse era things that we wound up continuing on doing, after we graduated high school. So those recordings are a little bit older than the band era. But I agree, we were not just playing those, the set list over and over again. We were actually making stuff up at the same time, because clearly we did have a couple of original songs.
So to continue with that, even though 5 Amp Fuse, dismembered, okay, we still ended up jamming out and still getting together. So kind of the moral to the story is that even if you're in a band and you still dismember one, it doesn't mean that's always permanently ended. Like, we never picked up anything else. I mean, Ted at that time started picking up, just like what you said, the drums. and I was still going over. Harris was still going over, and then we would have like some of our friends that were even like in some bands. You know, it was mostly just our like close friends, and we would just start making up all this crazy stuff too. So this is like even like freshman year of college, that went ahead and allowed us to go ahead and develop a lot more. So yes, kind of retracting back what I was saying, we made Tragedy Sky in 5-amp Fuse while practicing our improving and our creativity, but after the band, we then ended up started really improving a lot, which ended up actually, if we kind of put all those songs together, it's actually kind of like a comedy album.
There's a lot of different styles.
Yeah.
Well,
Don't know
right.
what we were thinking of. Okay, we just made up shit. Okay, that came to us, but it was yeah,
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
We still have
it was
fun.
a lot of fun.
It's not over. We're just
No.
not performing, it's just now just us getting together to play. But in that time, it was obviously the main driver. But I think that also taught us that we could still play music and just have so much fun with it, but not need to necessarily commit to a full band, because a band does take commitment. And so I think being older now, and everyone has a different life going on and different things. I know everyone can at least commit to a jam session when we're jamming. So
Yeah.
that commitment alone, people can do that. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
We can still get together every 4 weeks, more or less, and be able to play and get that all together. So, yeah. So I think. Any other stories? I think we're wrapping up on the set.
If I can just bring everything full circle on one more quick story, and then I think if you guys don't have any other stories, we can probably jump into our song of the week. So I don't know if you guys bought it with the money you made from one of those shows, but if you recall, Mr. Naparstik had that 65 Fender Bandmaster massive cabinet that you guys bought as a band.
That was with the money that we had earned. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't remember if you guys ever used it for a show or if you just had it sitting at Chris's house and it was
I think we used it once or twice.
Okay, so I'll get into this in a second here, but that cab is heavier than hell. And I can see why you probably didn't use it for a lot of gigs. It's loud, but it's heavy, and it's big, and you need a lot of space, and most of us didn't have big vehicles back then to transport stuff like that.
To be fair, when we were playing, the venues or the places we were playing weren't needing a cab that big.
Right.
212.
Right. You weren't playing arenas.
Nuts.
Right.
Yeah.
So where the story comes full circle is I think you guys had that for maybe a year, and decided we really don't want to deal with this. And so I ended up buying it off of you guys for, I don't know, like $150 or something.
I never saw that money.
I never did either.
Well, I paid somebody.
I think a drummer took it.
I paid somebody, I can tell you that much. That amp actually was my primary amp for a number of years, and it was massive, and I used it with the same head that sits behind me here. And at a certain point, again, we all kind of grew up and evolved, and my life changed, and my space just could not accommodate an amp of that size. Not only that, but so rarely did I ever turn up my amp past like 2, because the walls would shake if I turned it up any louder. And so I ended up putting it in my storage unit for a number of years. And a few months back, I was actually talking to my guitar teacher that I had through high school about potentially getting the matching amp for this head, or the matching cab, and he had sent me one at this place, Music Go Round, out in Natick. And I said, I've got that big Bandmaster cab. I'm wondering if I could get any money for that and put that toward a smaller matching cab for this amp. And so I said, I'm going to go get it out of my storage unit and bring it home. And he said, well, make sure if you do that, you take a look at the speakers and see what it's got for speakers, because if it has the original speakers, it might be worth more money. So I went over, I hauled it out of the storage unit. I forgot exactly how heavy and big this thing was. I put it in the truck, brought it home, took out all 50 of the screws on the back of the thing to be able to look at the speakers, and sent off some pictures to my guitar teacher, who came back to me and said, those are the original JBL D120F Gray Series speakers. Those are worth quite a bit of money. They're highly sought after. If you're thinking about getting rid of that, I would suggest swapping out the speakers and selling the speakers separately. So then I started thinking about it, and I was like, do I really want to have to take apart the amp to sell the speakers and sell the amp and get the money to be able to buy another cabinet? I really don't need another cabinet. The cabinet I have works fine. It's not the match to this head, but it sounds good, and it works. It puts out plenty of volume for me to go play at jam sessions and most gigs. But I was like, I really don't have space for the cab, and I don't want to put it back in the storage unit because then it's just rotting away and it's not doing anybody any good. So enter Ted. I reach out to Ted and send him a text at it was like 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. And I said, hey, question, here's the situation on this cab. I don't really want to get rid of it, but I don't have space for it at my house. Would I be able to keep it over at your house as my jam session amp? And I am well aware that it is completely overkill for the size of that space and what we're doing. And I wasn't expecting, an immediate answer, and I want to say maybe like 10 minutes later, Ted responded back to me and was like, yeah, just went downstairs, scoped out the basement. I know exactly where we can put it. No problem. Bring it over. We can leave it here.
I mean, everyone was leaving amps and stuff over. Like, I still have Chris's pedal board.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, everyone has their stuff over, because when you're consistently showing up to jam, it makes sense. So,
right.
Yeah.
But that cab would be, the first jam session I showed up to, I brought this setup here, which this cab is heavy, but not nearly as, I want to say that cab probably weighs about 90 pounds, because each of the speakers is easily 30 pounds, at least 30 or 40 pounds. And it's big and it's awkward and it stands about yay high, and I would not have wanted to haul that back and forth. So
no, I wouldn't expect you to, honestly.
So for Ted to allow me to have this monstrosity of a cab taking up space in his basement, but it comes full circle because you guys owned the cab as a band 20 years ago.
Right.
I bought it off of you. I had it for a number of years, and I actually hauled it to places where I was performing, and I have no idea how I managed to do that without killing myself for so many years. I guess I was younger then, and my dad was younger then, and he was helping me. And so I got a smaller cab, and I put that away for a while, and now it's back out and being used when we're able to jam.
It's now being used in our own jam sessions
That's right.
we initially bought it for.
And it is absurdly loud. And I think you guys can attest that my amp never passes maybe 3 at a jam session, because I would blow everybody away if I went any higher than that. But so that was, I would say, a good investment that has still stayed within the group over the last 20 years. So that's it was supposed to be a quick story, and it got a little bit longer. But
details are necessary.
That's right. There needs to be some backstory sometimes. But on that note, if you guys don't have anything else to add, I think we're ready to move into the song of the week. And do you guys want me to start, or would one of you like to start?
Kayla, go ahead and start.
All right. So my pick of the week, and we had a little bit of a fiasco at the beginning of this, because I came on, we were doing our pre-show prep, and I was like, I really hope that nobody else picked my song. So Chris and Matt had joined the call, and they hadn't picked it, but Matt was like, I'll bet you Ted's going to pick that song, because he's the one who wanted to play this when we were in 5-amp Fuse. So Ted came on, and I asked him if he had picked, and he hadn't quite figured out yet. And Matt said, don't tell him what you picked yet. Let's wait and see. And sure enough, Ted's pick was the same pick. So Ted had to pick a different song. My pick was Machine Head by Bush off of the 1994 album 16 Stone. And as I'd mentioned before, I was always more of a heavy metal fan, especially at the time that 5 Amp Fuse was doing their thing. But Machine Head was definitely one of my favorites that 5 Amp Fuse covered. And I know that we've played it at a few of the more recent jam sessions. And again, I think that was kind of Ted maybe driving a little bit of that. And, it's definitely a classic, and it makes an appearance still. But if I had to pick an all-time favorite Bush song, I think The Chemicals Between Us is a really good song. And the second pick for a tie would probably be Letting the Cable Sleep and Machine Head. So I can't imagine that anybody watching or listening has not heard Machine Head at this point. Although maybe I've had situations at work where I'm talking to part-time staff who were not even born when the song was written. They weren't even born in the 1990s. And so maybe there are people listening or watching that have not heard the song. If you're one of those people, go check it out. It's a classic. It's a really good song.
Just remember when you're listening to it, just breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out.
That's all you got to do.
That's right. Breathe in.
That's amazing.
Breathe
That's
out.
awesome. But
So that's my pick.
Yeah, so even though that was my initial pick, I decided to pick a different song. I went with one off of our set list that I really enjoyed playing in 5 Amp Fuse, Green Day's Basket Case, off the Dookie album from 1994. I started the song off on guitar, and I don't know, that was kind of my solo guitar moment in the band, starting that song off. So definitely classic, obviously, at this point, but that's my pick for this week.
classic album too.
Yep.
It is.
The album's an amazing album.
Chris, what did you have? What's your pick for this week?
My pick for this week is also off the Dookie album. It's Green Day's Longview off of the album Dookie. And it's this song, we would play it every now and then at different shows, and the bass line was what got me into the song. It's Mike Dirnt does such an amazing job with the bass line, and it's fantastic, and it has some interesting lyrics, but it's quite a song, and I still remember it all the time. Every time it comes up on my Spotify or something, I can always think, oh, I remember playing that back in the day in 5 Amp Fuse. Yep.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
All right, Matt.
So with this, keeping the theme going on, I'm gonna have to go with our the song "Damn It" by Blink-182 off of their Dude Ranch album in 1997. This was not only a underrated song when I first started playing Blink-182 stuff, but the more we kept playing it at shows, the more amped up the crowd got. So Damn It started off with Ted, Ted started off the guitar part. And I remember when we were playing that basement show, we opened up with Damn It. And just when he started playing that first guitar riff, there's just something about, when you hear that guitar riff, it's just a very, very motivational, very energetic type of.
It definitely pumps you up. Like it
just literally just
gets you going.
Very, very much so. And the way that Tom DeLonge, wrote it is just something that, every teenager back then, even to this day, can really go ahead and get really motivated by hearing that. And when you hear that first down, it's almost like you're about to start mischief, but in a pop punk way. So Damn It was always my favorite playing at these shows. I know it was a big crowd favorite in addition to Basket Case and Machine Head. So the song, and Longview as well. So a lot of these songs that we're picking for Song of the Weeks our audience really loved it. Obviously, you know, the more that we played it, the more energetic people got. We've even had people come to us before the show and say, "Hey, are you going to be playing this song?" And we'd say, "Yeah, it's on our set list." But yeah, "Damn It" is a great song off of the Dude Ranch album. And actually, I believe, and I'm sorry, correct me if I am wrong, I believe Tom DeLonge was on that album. It was Travis Barker wasn't the drummer at that time. But other than that, yeah, it was Scott Rayner. Yes, I have to revert to the websites and whatnot. But yes, "Damn It." Dude,
Awesome.
1997. What's your song of the week, guys? What is your song of the week for the audience that is listening to us? Let us know. Is there something on our set list that you remember that was playing that you know is one of your favorites? Enter Sandman was not on that. Yes, that's probably the 5th time we're referencing Metallica's Enter Sandman, but
That should have been my pick of the week.
it should have been. Yeah, that's great. Harris, you know, obviously, you know, like a brother, like a friend, you know, a musician, you know, obviously playing bass. Love to have you come back on the show again, talk more on whether it's still 5 Amp Fuse or whether it's other bands that we played in as well, to even you know, some other segments that we talk about. We'd love to have you back on the show. It's been a pleasure. You know,
thanks so much for having me, guys.
Yeah, appreciate the time, man.
Yeah. So, I'm going to hand off to Kayla, who's going to let you guys know and remind you guys about, our voicemail or email.
The weekly reminder of where you can get a hold of us, and we talked about it in the last show. There are a lot of ways to reach us. We're very responsive, but if you want to leave us a voice message, you can do so by going to anchor.fm/distortedopinions and hitting the little voice message button on the page. And we're hoping that we might be able to work any messages that are left into future shows, or you can just leave us a message if you prefer to not have to type something up. If you're the old school type and you prefer to type something, or maybe you just don't like recording things, we have an email address that you can reach us at as well, which is distortedopinionsshow@gmail.com. You can shoot us an email there. While you're on the Anchor page, if you go over there, we've got a list of all the places you can find us in audio format. There's also links to all of our social media platforms, so you can reach us on those as well. There are many, many ways to reach us, so don't hesitate to reach out. We want to hear, you know, if you've got, like Matt said, stories about 5 Amp Fuse back in the day, you got a song of the week pick, if you've got a suggestion for a future show, feel free to send us an email. And as we mentioned last time, if you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, give us a rating over there, because that'll help us out if we get more people reviewing the show. Yeah. But you can find us on a lot of other platforms too, if that's not your thing. So with that, I think we have reached the end of our show. Thank you again, Chris, for joining us. It was great having you. It was great reminiscing and hearing so many stories from back in the day. And we will see everybody next time. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.